The moons in Elden Ring are more than just giant rocks floating through space. They seem to have a will of their own and somewhat impose it upon the world of Elden Ring. Some notable examples of this are Lady Renala's bright moon, from which she harnesses her immense power, Ranni's dark moon we see in her ending, and a hidden black moon that is said to sit above the eternal city of Nokron, my second favorite zone in the entire game. Where this theory starts to get weird though is in the first week of release for Elden Ring. Players who found themselves at the Moonlight Altar, that high rock cliff face in Liurnia you access near the end of Ranni's questline, they noticed 2 giant moons sitting in the sky. But ever since that first week, players have not been able to spot the second moon, instead only seeing one hovering above in the night sky. We have multiple recordings from this time period showing that there was in fact at one point 2 moons in the game at this location, but now they've mysteriously disappeared. So the question then becomes, what happened to the other moon, and what are the implications of it suddenly evaporating out of thin air? Potentially these 2 moons were a mistake by FromSoft that was patched out quickly after release. But the issue with this is that to this day we still see on the clock that there are 2 moons in the cycle, with a full moon surrounded by a crescent moon in the art. Which means it certainly seems like these 2 moons were intentional, which makes the idea that one has never been seen again a haunting thought of some sort of cosmic event going on that we're unaware of. One of the best parts of Elden Ring is defeating a boss or difficult enemy and finding a brand new, undiscovered weapon with an entirely new moveset and set of abilities that can drastically change how you play the game. There's a lot of debate in the community as to what the hardest weapon in the game to actually acquire is, ranging from the Magma Blade, the Envoy's Longhorn, the Halig Tree Great Shield, the Halo Scythe, Fire Monk and Noble Golden Swords, and many more. But for many, one of the most rare and hard to get weapons is actually the Celebrant Sickle. Found in the windmill village of the Atlas Plateau, the Celebrant Sickle only has a 0.5% drop chance, meaning 1 in 200 players who even go to this area and fight the right mob have a chance of getting it. It is found on one of only 2 of the demented and crazy residents of the town, the 2 wearing long blue capes, and unless you are extremely lucky, will require that you kill these 2 ladies over and over for hours to even have a chance of the item dropping. Luckily for players that did receive their prize though, the sickle is quick, strong, and extremely fast with potent attacks, and most importantly, makes your character look super badass. As previously mentioned, right before the shattering occurred, Lord Radagon left his current life Renala in Liurnia and returned back to the Erd Tree, where he immediately was taken as Marika's second husband, following her banishing her first, Godfrey, and the Tarnished from grace. But this story only gets more twisted and scary the more we dive into it. You see, if you talk to the giant church turtle, Muriel, Pastor of Vows, he tells how at one point a statue was commissioned that held the secret that Radagon held so close. We can actually find this statue in Lindell Capital, along with some other spots, and if activated, the massive statue of Radagon transforms into Marika? Radagon's massive secret was that he was in fact Marika, or at least they had some sort of connection. The problem is multiple different sources argue different things, with some implying Radagon and Marika were always the same person, like when Enya mentioned that all demigods stem from Queen Marika, which means Radagon having children with Renala must have been Marika the whole time, and others implying they conjoined at some point or have some strange and unknown connection. This has resulted in this plot point being one of the lesser known and most open-ended lore dives in the entire game. It could be that Radagon and Marika simply represent 2 sides of the same thing, the Greater Will's essence, and Radagon could be the loyal and fierce warrior, while Marika could be the treacherous maiden harboring doubts. This would explain why when Marika breaks the Elden Ring, Radagon then begins trying to fix it after Marika is banished and imprisoned. And this also would explain the ending of Elden Ring, where we open the Erd Tree and come to the final boss expecting Marika, but instead find Radagon, potentially partially infused with her instead. My personal take is maybe as Marika began to harbor doubts about the Greater Will, she banished Godfrey and the Tarnished in order to make them grow strong through great trials, to one day come back and defeat the Greater Will's hold over her, so that she could then turn and fight back. But the Greater Will sensed this fever brewing inside Marika and created a great warrior, Radagon, from her essence, who was then sent to seduce Lady Renala and cause the downfall of the House of the Moon. This would have given the Greater Will total control of the land, but what the Greater Will didn't expect was that one of Radagon's children, Ranni, would betray her father, and kick off the shattering which resulted in Marika also breaking the Elden Ring, greatly hurting their Greater Will's plans. Maybe even Ranni and Marika had some sort of plot together, to take hold of the Greater Will's power and drive the divine being from the land, with Ranni entrusting you as the Tarnished with finally slaying the Elden Beast and giving her a right to the throne in her ending, should you choose it. FromSoft fans are known for being some of the most hardcore and intense, but also loving communities out there. And this was proven in no better place than the story of Stray Demon. Named after one of the big monsters from Dark Souls, Mr. Stray Demon was a fanatic FromSoft fan who would constantly post on Reddit about the upcoming release of Elden Ring. He knew everything there was to know about all the other Souls games, and relished the fact he could bring so much joy to others by talking about lore, making posters, and just genuinely being a great person to be around and making the community feel special. In a horrific turn of events though, Stray Demon's daily posts about Elden Ring started to slow down as the game's release date got closer, and other fans started to get worried. Multiple posts were made about Stray Demon's disappearance, until it was found out that on his Twitter account he had mentioned some major medical issues he was dealing with just before disappearing. It seemed clear that Stray Demon had sadly passed away just before the release of his most anticipated game ever, and as a tribute, the community created tons of heartfelt messages and social media posts about the man who just loved playing FromSoft games. At the final hour though, just as everyone was in the middle of mourning, Stray Demon returned in a flash of light to let everyone know that he was in fact having very distressing medical conditions, but that he was alive and kicking, and he would be joining everyone in the game within the coming days. He hasn't posted on Reddit since, but I was able to find a very recent post by him on his hidden Twitter account, so he for sure is still alive and kicking, and most assuredly has played Elden Ring. Long live Stray Demon. If you didn't know, the giants in the snowy peaks to the northern half of the Elden Ring map pay tribute to and worship a deity known as the Fell God. That giant red eye we see in the fire giant boss battle in the middle of his body is actually a physical representation and birth to the Fell God itself, who wishes to see all through the bodies of the giants. But even more interestingly, this may actually give us an idea as to why trolls in the game have a giant missing section of their stomachs, something you likely became accustomed to in the early game. From the lore, we know that the trolls are actually long-lost descendants of the giants themselves, and that they at some point did something considered extremely treacherous, and were banished from the lands of the Fell God. Could it be that the giant missing section of each troll's stomach used to be an eye of the Fell God, and that after they betrayed this all-knowing deity, they were forever banished from the land, forced to roam aimlessly, and also forced to mindless servitude pulling caravans all along the world? It would perfectly explain how these massive and powerful beasts have fallen so low on the totem pole. One of the best features that Elden Ring has that differentiates it from other RPGs in the genre is its amazing map. Instead of being full of quest markers and big signs leading the player to exactly where they should go, it's a game of its own, where players can zoom in on interesting land masses and buildings and set forth into the world to find out what's there. Most players though don't know that this map actually also contains a lot of hidden messages and meanings that give insight into a lot of the lore in the game, or at least we think. You see, back when Elden Ring was in beta, there was a map that could be accessed by players that contained some Yi Chinese script that was translated by Chinese speakers in the community that revealed some very interesting things. And while the beta map never made it into the full game, we can still find similar markings all around the main Elden Ring map, signifying that the older scripts were likely canon hints. One of these in the North Sea reads, "Do not listen to the songs of the lying mermaids," when translated, and could be a nod to Greek mythology where sirens would lure sailors to their homes before killing them. Another cool find is a word just beneath a whirlpool in the Elden Ring map, which when translated to text reads, "Multiple witnesses to a sea serpent. Danger." Many of the other markings around the map give names to previously known locations, like Limgrave actually being named the Sea God Continent, and many others have to do with water and the ocean in general, signifying that it may yet play a bigger role in the world of Elden Ring. Maybe a potential underwater DLC where we fight giant sea monsters? A man can dream.